we've got through our introduction, we've introduced given context, introduced the controversy, and then provided a thesis. It's time to map out what we're going to do in our body paragraphs. In persuasion, it's really important to follow a very strict format conceptually. We're not talking about sentence by sentence. What we're really talking about is a concept. All persuasive paragraphs are built around claims. And claims actually exist as the reason why you believe your thesis is true. Okay? They support directly the thesis statement. All right? So if you think Abraham Lincoln is the best president, you're going to have a reason why, and you're going to say, your claim would be Abraham Lincoln is the best president because he, won the Civil War. That's a reason why, right? You believe winning the Civil War is really important. Okay? Now from there, you have a reason, but where's your evidence? Why is that important, right? So now you need to present evidence, okay? And that's from reading, that's experience, that's observation. That reading here that we talk about, that reading's usually going to come in research, right? So all of that information that you have to support it, that's the evidence, right? That's our data. We have to have that. Data directly supports the claim. The claim directly supports the thesis. Do you see how they're tied together now? It's all built together. I mean, everything has to be strong for this thing to work. You're only as strong as your weakest link. So we need to make sure all components of this, of a paragraph, are tied together to make that whole essay strong. After you've presented all of this information, all of this data, it needs to be explained in some way, right? Like, okay, so there's a bunch of statistics. What does that all mean? Why should I care? That's what I'm thinking as a reader, right? So you need to think that way too. It's like, the reader's going to want to know why I told them this statistic that 50% of students who do this and that end up dropping out of school. That's an important statistic, but what does it mean? That's what we call the warrant, the explanation, right? Warrant. We want to warrant this information. It explains the data and how it proves the claim. So everything's connected. Warrant is connected to the data connected to the claim, and of course, the claim goes up and connects to the thesis. All nice and unified, right? So what does it prove? I want you to pretend here that this is a game of connect the dots, right? You want to play the game. So like, I'm going to play the game, connect the dots. So that's your claim. You want to play the game. The data are all the points, right, of the picture. The warrant is the numbering of the dots, right? You need to know which direction to go. Because if I don't have any numbers, how do I know what kind of picture to draw? How do I know what conclusions to draw from the data? See? So you may draw a dinosaur, that's what it was supposed to be, and you are the writer, so you know what it was supposed to be. You know what that data means. But if you don't give me a warrant, I'm going to draw a chicken or something. It's nothing like you thought. You're like, oh, no. I presented that statistic to prove that this position is right and that position B is wrong. And maybe as a reader I said, oh, well, I didn't know that because you didn't explain that. And so I thought what you meant was, and that's the worst thing that can happen if you're, a writer, is to have someone else take your information and interpret it in their own way. Don't give them the opportunity. The warrant explains all of the information, all of the data that you have created, all the data you have presented, right? So it's the explanation. Let's take a look at how some of this is going to function, okay? Because we'll get to a paragraph as an example, but not quite yet. We need to organize this in a way too. Claim, data, warrant are the concepts, right? Our paragraph needs to have these things. How do we structure it is a different question. So there are two different ways we can do this. One of these is called an argument sandwich, all right? And it is kind of an alternating method of persuasion. So in an argument sandwich, you begin with your claim, right? Claims always start your paragraphs, okay? And it always goes in the order of claim, data, warrant. That's never going to change. Data comes before warrant, okay? Claims come before data. That never changes. You can't just say, you know what, I'm going to start with my warrant. No. You're not going to do that, all right? So your claim begins. Then you're going to transition. This is our argument sandwich. Then you're going to transition to a first example. Then you're going to provide that first example. Then you're going to explain that first example. And then you're going to repeat that whole thing with the second example, and the whole process starts over. Now, it's important to note, there's only one claim per paragraph, okay? You can have as many argument sandwiches as you would like. So you want to have 20 examples? I mean, that'd probably be excessive, but technically you could really put it together that way. All right, it would be claim, data, warrant, data, warrant, data, warrant, data. It would all the way down the list. All right, that'd be kind of, it would take a while, but you could do it. You just understand that when it comes to an argument sandwich, you alternate. You present your data and then you discuss it right away, right? And so, you don't ever have a second opportunity to go for warrant. You have multiple opportunities to go through warrant. I apologize. Multiple opportunities. You keep going back to warrant because you have a claim, then you have data, then you have warrant. Then you have more data, then you have another warrant. Then you have data, then you have another warrant. You just keep explaining it. Now, some people don't like that. Some people are like, you know what, that's messy. I don't like going back and forth. I just want to show all my data and then explain it all at the same time. I want to say, here's all my data. After I'm done with that, I want to say, here's all my warrant. That's great. That's no problem. Especially if you recognize that's who you are as a writer, good job for you, right? So that's something a little different, okay? We're going to call that a data dump, all right? And a data dump begins with your claim. Same thing, you transition to your example. Then you give a first example. Then you give your second example. And then you give whatever examples you have. And then after you're done giving all of your data, after all of it's been presented, then you explain all of it, right? Just all of it. At one big swoop, you're like, and now I'm going to tell you what all this means now. That is a data dump because you're dumping all the data right there. Now, I want to, it sounds like, is that very sophisticated? Sure it is. If it works for you, it's sophisticated. Okay, it can work really, really well. So don't avoid it just because you're a little timid about it. If this is how you think your brain is operating, I really think you should try it. Okay, now, a special note about this. Sometimes you're going to want to go with an argument sandwich. Sometimes you want to go with the data dump. Like maybe the first body paragraph of the essay, you're like, I'm going to use my argument sandwich. And the second body paragraph, you're like, I don't know, maybe a data dump's better. They do not have to be the same. You don't have to parallel them throughout an essay. Sometimes you can use argument sandwich. Sometimes you can use a data dump. That's on you. Stylistic choice. You're going to hear me say that a lot. It's a stylistic choice. So let's actually see how this works. We're going to be taking that same argument that we looked at with the introduction, right, about high school sports, and let's take a look at. This is just reorganized, right? That's all we're doing is taking the same information and reorganizing it to follow different models here, the argument sandwich or the data dump. So let's go ahead and take a look at the first one, which is the argument sandwich, right? So I'm starting with my claim. The primary reason the relationship between school and sport is toxic is the message it sends to students. So the argument is, hey, schools and sports shouldn't be together, maybe obviously debatable, okay? And I say, you know what? It's a toxic because the message it sends to students. The entire paragraph should be supporting that claim about the message, right? About the message. Okay, and I'm going to be alternating. I'm going to be presenting data, then I'm going to explain the data. Now, when I say you present one example, then you explain the example, sometimes people are going to put two bits of examples together, and that's okay. That doesn't have to be like really super strict in the fact that you're like, you show one quote and then you have to explain it right away. That's not true. You may want to string a couple of quotes together and then explain it, and then string a couple of other quotes together and then explain it. That's okay too, guys. It's a dance, all right? We mix and match. We work around problems. It's stylistic things here. I'm just giving you a concept to work with. All right. So here's the data. Practice schedules, games, and other team commitments often trump the work of the student, at least in the student's mind. Data. Right here. And now I'm going to explain it. Now, how I explain data, that's my warrant, right? How I warrant the information, sometimes I can ask a question, and that question is rhetorical. It has an automatic answer, and so my warrant is an inferred warrant built upon the rhetorical question. That's what's going to happen here. All right? And who could blame the students for thinking that their sport is more significant than anything else? I mean, can you blame them? No, you really can't, because kids miss school for sports, or kids, have poor grades sometimes when they're playing sports, whatever the reason is. So this is my warrant. So claims up here. Here's my data, abbreviated with the letter D. This question here is my warrant, right? Now I'm going to go with more data. Why? Because I am working on, my argumentative sandwich, okay? Layering it up. All right. Coaches either insinuate or blatantly state the greater importance of their sport in comparison to other activities such as work, church, or school. All right, so there's some more data. Okay. Of course, many coaches claim that these other commitments are important, right? So that's still part of my data too, actually. But there is my transition to my warrant. Notice that it's not necessarily its own separate sentence. They can be together. It's all right. But if a student athlete chooses to do homework over attending practice, what happens to the kid? He or she is benched or kicked off the team. This is my warrant. Make a commitment to the team, they say, but that is precisely the point. See, I'm explaining what all this information means. We shouldn't be asking kids to commit to a sport through schools when the role of school, its primary and practically singular purpose, is to convince students to commit to their education. How can we expect students to successfully navigate our hypocrisies? They look to their educators and expect to be educated, yet when their coaches miss school for games, the message sent to the students is clear. Now, look, this is all warrant. I'm going here, warrant. Warrant down here. Now I switch. There's my data. When coaches miss school for games, that's a bit of evidence, right? Coaches do that, all right? That's a bit of data. Now I'm transitioning right back to my warrant right here. The message sent to students is clear. Sports are more important. That is my interpretation of that information. Someone could reasonably say, just because coaches miss school does not mean that they think sports are more important. It means that they are committed to their students in all their walks of life. See, that's a different interpretation. What if I didn't write my warrant? What if I didn't actually say what the message was? That means the reader could interpret their data however they want. That's not good. That's why I put it there. That's why I actually placed the warrant where it is. All right. So notice going back and forth. Claim, data, warrant, data, warrant, data, warrant, data, warrant. It's a nice dance, right? So we're going to keep looking here, right, at this. Some more data. When schools hire partially or entirely based on coaching needs, the message is clear. Good coaching is more important than good teaching. So I talked about schools hiring coaches. That's my data. Then I said, what is the message? That good teaching is more important than good coaching is more important than good teaching. That's my warrant. That's how I've interpreted the data. This is not sustainable. This is my deep data, right? This is not a sustainable situation, and the only way out of it is to cut ties. School is school and sport is sport. No line should be blurred. No confusing messages sent. Yet it isn't just the messages we send to kids that are damaging. By blending schools with sports, we're doing real and permanent damage to our students because the talent of teaching is trumped by the qualities of coaching. Now, this is something we haven't mentioned yet. This isn't really part of my data or my warrant right here. This is actually my transition to my next paragraph, right? Because I want to move on to my new topic, because that's a really important component as well. Good writers, sophisticated writers, don't just segment their writing and say, here's one paragraph and here's another paragraph that's totally not related. They actually transition, and that's my transition. You can guess what the next paragraph is going to be about. It's going to be about qualities of the talent of teaching, right? How we're permanently damaging our students because we're not getting maybe the best teachers, okay? So that is an argumentative sandwich. That's how that looks, all right? And you may say that's great, but what's the inverse basically? What's the data dump? The data dump is the opposite of that. So let's take a look at it. Same paragraph, essentially, same information. So don't think like I'm repeating myself it's not a new paragraph. It's a restructured same paragraph that you just saw, right? So here we go. What do we begin with? We begin with the claim. Nothing's changed there, right? So same claim. The primary reason the relationship between school and sport is toxic is the message it sends to students. There's my claim right here. Got my claim. Practice schedules, games, and other team commitments often trump the work of the student, at least in the student's mind. Coaches either insinuate or blatantly state the greater importance of their school in comparison to other activities such as church, work, or school. Of course, many coaches claim that these commitments are important, but if a student athlete chooses to do homework over attending practice, what happens to the kid? He or she is benched or kicked off the team. Look at this. This is all data. I'm just really, really sticking. Now, there may be some slight, you may deviate slightly from this, like you may mix in a warrant very slightly. But, for the most part, it's all data. So this is all my data. He or she is kicked off the team, make a commitment to the team, they say. Another issue is that students look to their educators and expect to be educated. Yet when coaches miss school for games, the message to students is clear. Sports are more important. Notice I've got to my warrant a little bit. I told you it could creep in, deviate a little bit. So there's some. When schools hire partially or entirely based on coaching needs, the message is clear. Good coaching is more important than good teaching. Notice now, I'm going to go all warrant here. That was a lot of data. I mixed in just 1 or 2 bits of warrant earlier, but for the most part, I didn't deviate. Now look at all this. This is all warrant. I'm explaining everything. And who could blame the students for thinking that their sport is more significant than anything else? However, we shouldn't be asking kids to commit to a sport through schools when the role of school, its primary and practically singular purpose, is to convince students to commit to their education. How can we expect students to successfully navigate our hypocrisies? This is not a sustainable situation, and the only way out of it is to cut ties. School is school and sport is sport. No line should be blurred, no confusing messages sent. Yet it just isn't the messages, and then I'm transitioning. I'll stop there. I won't need to read that to you again. Right here is my transition. Pretty neat, huh? All we have to do is reorganize it if we want. Same information, just presented in a different order. It's really an ordering thing, all right? So it's just a sequence. Do you want to put all your data together, or do you want to alternate between your data and your warrant? What do you want to do? All right, it's a choice for you as a writer, but I want you to know that you have the choice. All right, you can choose and you can change it. Maybe sometimes you're like, I'm going to reorganize this paragraph and maybe it works better this way. Maybe it does. And that's an important thing. You got to know both. You got to try them out too. You can't just say, you know what, I just data dump and I don't do any other type of writing. Well, that's not very good. It's like only eating an apple and never trying a banana or something. You got to figure out if it works better for you. So that is really how we want to organize our body paragraphs with claim data warrant using either an argumentative sandwich, or the other option, of course, is the data dump.